Years ago, I did a tutorial on how to ice a cake. It was one of my first tutorials ever and still old, but it's the same way I do ice my cakes to this day. I like it because it's fast. In here, I am adding icing to the top of the cake. I am using a crusting buttercream, cream cheese buttercream, and I have the recipe in my website. This icing smooths really nicely, almost to look like fondant. The key for a crumb coat is you want enough icing to seal the crumbs. That's why it's called a crumb coat. But you want to be able to see the cake. If you put too much, when you do the second coat, you will have too much icing. So all you want to do is enough to seal your cake. Before I start icing my cake, these are some tips that you should follow. When I do my cakes, I usually bake them, seal them well, and place them in the fridge at least overnight. I do this because the flavor settles in, the cake gets cold, which it gets harder and it's easier to work with. Some people try to ice cakes as soon as they're out of the oven or maybe a couple of hours later, and the cake's still soft. So you might have a harder time trying to finish a cake like that. So if you have a broken cake, you might understand now why that is happening. So you have to be a lot more careful. It is important that your buttercream is perfect for the crumb coat. If it's too soft, it is easy to work with, but it won't be easy to do a second coat that will cover your cake. You will see a translucent buttercream and your cake will show underneath, and you want to avoid that. It cannot be too stiff because it'll break your cake. So make sure your buttercream is at a medium consistency. Eventually you learn to work with this and you'll find out what works best for you. I start by placing on top of my cake enough icing so I can cover the top of my cake. Make sure to spread the buttercream well so you don't have a mountain in the center of the cake. This is a very common mistake between beginners, but you want to avoid it. When you're making a cake that is tiered, then that mountain in the center will create a lot of problems. Once you have smoothed the top of your cake enough with the icing and you can see it's flat and no mountain of icing in the center, you can start with the side of your cake. Usually I use a 7-inch spatula. I like an angle spatula, but some people like other ones, personal choice again. And I take my spatula and most of my icing will go at the tip of my spatula. That way I can control the amount of icing I'm putting. So you can see when I start with my icing, I start on the bottom part of my cake. I'm trying to seal my cake to the board. That way my cake doesn't move and it stays put. Make sure to seal it well so you don't have any holes. My cakes are usually around 4 inches tall, maybe 4.5 up to 5 inches tall. Once I finish with the bottom part of my cake, I move to the top part. If you want to move faster, you can use a bigger spatula, especially if you have a bigger cake. Just keep in mind that because your spatula is bigger, you're dealing with more buttercream, it is a little bit heavier, so your hands will get tired faster. Usually I clean my spatula, as you can see, and grab more icing. And remember, this is a crumb coat, so have a bowl of icing that is just for the crumb coat. Because you're constantly cleaning your spatula in the bowl, the icing in the bowl will get some of the crumbs, and you won't be able to use that icing for covering the rest of the cake. So just grab a little bit of the icing and put it in a bowl just for the crumb coat. Once I cover my whole cake, I just make sure that at the top part I have this little lip of icing going up. This helps especially when you want a sharp corner. Not too important in a crumb coat though. Once your cake looks like this, you want to grab a scraper, a bench scraper. This tool is just a must for me. And I like a scraper that has a square side, an L shape, because that way I can put it against the board and make sure that it's level. That way I have a straight cake. And I take my spatula and I go all around the cake. Now, that lid that I left on the top is so I can have a nice edge when I am scraping towards the center with the scraper. Since this is just a crumb coat, I am not trying to have a perfect cake. I'm not trying for it to have this perfect nice edge on the top yet. All I want to do right now is make sure that my cake is level, straight, not perfect, but at least almost there. And then later when I give my second coat, I can make sure that my cake is finished perfectly. As you can see, I can see the cake, I can see the layers, I can see the crumbs in the cake. This is exactly what you need right now. Once you have finished with the crumb coat, you're gonna take this cake and you're gonna place it in the fridge. Now, depending on how fast you need the cake, the steps will change. If you're gonna do the cake the same day, you can leave it a couple of hours in the fridge until it hardens, because the buttercream will harden, and then you can give the second coat. The way I do this is if I am working on a tier cake, like a wedding cake, I do all my crumb coats in all my cakes, and usually by the time I finish with the crumb coats, then I start with the second coat. And that way I move faster and I don't waste time. If you start working on the cake and you cannot finish it the same day, make sure to take some plastic and seal your cake if you're gonna leave it overnight in the fridge. Because if you don't, the cake is gonna get a lot of condensation, and you can work with it, but it's a little bit more difficult to put icing on top of a cake that is wet. So if that ever happens to you, make sure to take some paper and pat the excess water away before you start icing your cake. The second coat and the crumb coat are applied in the same manner. So if you want a more detailed explanation on how to do it, just go watch my video how to ice a cake. I know it's an old video, but I still use the same techniques, and I promise you that with practice, is one of the best techniques out there. You can get really fast at doing cakes. There's other ways you can finish a cake, and I will do tutorials on how to do them, so that way you have options. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and remember, for more tutorials, visit my website, Design Me a Cake. All the links will be posted in the comment box below. Don't forget to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Until next time, ta-ta!